So what I'm trying to show here, this represents the solar deal process, because one of the first questions that people ask is, hold it, Dan, this contract that they're sending is 35 to 40 pages long, and it starts out with an option agreement. And then as an exhibit to the option agreement is this long-term lease. Why is there an option period? And why does the option period sometimes need to be 4 to 5 years? Well, what I want you to focus on for the most part is the development phase, what it's called. There is so much that these developers have to do before they can begin constructing or even make the decision to construct the solar field. All right. So the first thing they're going to have to do is locate these valuable properties, right? And what they need is they need to get the landowner to sign an exclusive agreement. All right. So that gives them the exclusive right to now spend the next 3 or 4 years getting this property into the interconnection queue, planning the acquisitions, requiring power purchase agreements, getting the regulatory agencies to agree to those power purchase agreements, transmission lines. So every year that takes place up during this development phase is a tremendous amount of planning. All right. And they are going to want the landowner to give them the exclusive right, because they're not going to spend 4 to 5 years and a lot of money planning to develop this property for a solar field unless they have an exclusive right to do so. All right. So some of the major provisions of these contracts is the term of the agreement, the property's description, and the payments. So initially, this option period is for 4 to 5 years, and it provides the developer time for the due diligence, the permitting, the feasibility, the study, the interconnection queue, purchase power agreements before they enter into a formal lease. So if they make the decision to go ahead and develop, then they're going to be notifying the landowner that we are exercising our right to execute this formal lease agreement, which is usually 30 years with an option to extend it another 5 to 10 years. Additionally, they may have made an exclusive agreement on all of your properties. Say, for instance, you've got 415 acres, right? They're going to want that option to develop all of it, but they're not necessarily going to be required to develop all of it. They're not going to develop a project for a 100 megawatt project if they can only sell 60 megawatts. So when they notify you that they want to exercise their right to enter into the long-term lease, you have to be prepared that it may not cover all of the acreage that was covered by the option agreement. So during the option period, they're going to make a payment to the landowner at the first day of each of these years. All right. So for instance, year one, they're going to get a payment, and those payments go anywhere from $2,000 to $35,000 per year. They're going to be paid that at the beginning of each year during the option period. During that option period, they have the right to either terminate the contract if they are not going to be able to develop, or notify the landowner they're going to exercise their right to enter into the long-term lease. And when they enter into the long-term lease, they're going to be making payments to the landowner anywhere from $300 an acre to $2,000 an acre per year with a 2% escalator. All right, and I want to show you actually a deal that was actually closed on. And this is what a common solar offer looks like. In this particular case, they proposed to enter into a contract covering 400 acres in Brown County, Ohio. Contract provided for a 5-year option to enter into a long-term solar development lease. In this deal, during the option period, the developer will make a payment to you, the landowner, at the beginning of each year as follows: $10,000, $15,000, $20,000, $25,000, and $30,000. So that's the payment the landowner is going to receive at the beginning of each year during the option period. And at any time prior to the end of the 5th year, the developer can either terminate the contract or exercise its option to enter into the long-term lease covering all or a portion of the 400 acres. And in this particular case, the term of this lease was 30 years with the option to extend it for an additional 10 years. And the annual payment being made was $1,050 per acre with a 2% escalator. All right. And that's for the lease. What I want to show you is when we're talking about this, you hear this term revenue stream. The revenue stream in this particular case is going to be the payment being made by the developer to the landowner for this 30-year period, and maybe an additional 10 years. So real quick, let's just talk about what these revenue streams look like. So what we look at this as a revenue stream being a consistent, predictable, and dependable cash payment that's made annually in most cases by a developer to a landowner. What we talked about initially, the landowner is going to sign the option agreement, but the payments made during the option period is not what we would term predictable, because the developer can actually terminate that option at any time. However, if the developer elects to enter into the long-term lease, the landowner is going to be receiving a predictable payment every year. And these annual payments are referred to as a revenue stream. And in a lot of cases, the question we would ask is, if you're a landowner and they're going to develop your property and you're going to be getting a revenue stream for 30 years, what would you be willing to sell that revenue stream for? So for this example, if you're going to receive $100,000 every year for 30 years with an escalator, you're receiving $4 million. So in the alternative to you waiting 30 years to receive $4 million, what would you be willing to accept on day one to sell that revenue stream? And Craig will get into that a little bit more. So what kind of cash flows these revenue streams come from? Solar farms, wind turbines, cell towers. These cash flows can be sold during any period of the lease, but are most likely to receive stronger offers once the construction and production period begins. The revenue streams are in very high demand from energy investors who are scrambling to add green energy investments to their portfolios. They're prepared to pay huge premiums for these cash flows. And as Craig can elaborate, Wall Street is desperate to show that they are invested in green energy. I'm going to just skip a couple slides here, Craig.
Yeah, that's fine. And if there's at any point, guys, if there's any questions, feel free to jump on, unmute yourself, go ahead and jump in. If you have a question about it, likely somebody else does as well. So don't hesitate to either put it in the chat or just go ahead and unmute yourself and feel free to ask it live if you want to.
Yeah, and sorry, guys, I'm just kind of blowing through this as quick as possible so Craig can get into his portion of this presentation. Let's just talk real quick about energy storage. Happens all the time. Currently, what we're seeing are as many energy storage deals being made as there are solar deals. And I want you to understand what an energy storage is. Energy storage is the capture of energy at one time for use at a later time to reduce the imbalances between energy demand and energy consumption. So put it another way, you're buying electricity off the grid when demand is low, you're storing it and then selling it back to the grid when demand is high. What does energy storage look like? Looks like a bunch of shipping containers. All right. The energy storage deal is not going to require near as much acreage as generally leased for solar. In this particular case, every deal we've seen has been either from 5 to 15 acres, where they are going to put something that looks very similar to this on the property, and they're probably going to have to build a substation next to it. What does an energy storage deal look like? This. So the offer would come in. The developer proposes to enter into a contract covering 15 acres you own in Brown County, Ohio. The contract's to provide for a 5-year option to purchase the 15 acres. And purchase is the operative word. They're not going to want to lease your land to build energy storage. They need to purchase the land. And the reason they need to purchase it is they're probably going to have to build a substation right next to those energy storage containers. The substation is going to need to be conveyed to the utilities, and that conveyance is going to take place under a deed. So they're going to want to purchase your property. All right. There's an option period for battery storage also. And in this particular case, they were offering to pay $10,000 for the first 2 years and $15,000 each year for the remaining 3 years under the 5-year option period. And at any time prior to the end of the 5th year, the developer can exercise its option to purchase the 15-acre tract at a price of $30,000 an acre for $450,000. All right. Just a couple other ideas of what battery storage and energy storage can look like. All right. Some of these landowners do not want shipping container looking facilities on their property. All right. These developers can make these energy storage and battery storage facilities look like anything you want them to be. They can make it look like a house. They can make it look like a barn. In this particular case, so this is a cryptocurrency mining facility in Plano. What I want to show you is I've just given you 2 examples, one of a 400-acre solar offer, and one is a 15-acre battery storage offer. Now, this deal actually closed. All right, so this is a property that was listed on Landgate, 415 acres, and that the offer that came in was to develop 400 acres of it for solar and 15 acres of it for battery storage. So here's an individual. It doesn't live on this property, just listed it, hoping somebody would be interested in developing it for solar. And they got an offer from the same company, one offer for solar, one offer for battery storage. There was a 5-year option paid for each of those contracts. All right, what I want to show you here is so going back. This here is the revenue stream to be paid to this landowner. 400 acres, $1,050 per acre per year with a 2% escalator. So what this is showing you is over a 30-year period, this property owner is going to be receiving $17 million. That's the revenue stream. All right. And Craig can tell you that he could probably sell this revenue stream on day one up here in year one for anywhere from 40 to 45% of this $17 million number. All right. So there is a market out there wanting to buy these revenue streams. And this, in fact, is the deal that was made to this landowner in Brown County, Ohio. On that property. One other thing that you may have heard of is solar plus storage systems. All right. So what does that look like? It looks very similar to the battery storage, but solar plus storage is a system built on the property. It's a battery storage system that's charged by a connected solar farm. The battery storage system can provide energy when the solar energy systems is no longer producing, and for instance, at night or on cloudy days. And the battery storage system can also provide reliable energy during public safety outages, grid outages, and power failures. And this is what solar plus looks like. So I mentioned earlier, with battery storage, you have the ability to buy power off the grid, store it when demand is low, wait till demand is high, price is higher, sell it back to the grid. This is a situation that you're looking at now where they can even store the electrons coming from the solar panels into these battery storage and retain them to be sold at a later date. So even though there may not be demand to put these electrons into the grid at this time, they can generate electricity and store it right on the property.